So here's my Simulink model, Simulink Dead Reckoning with chart. What it's going to do is it's going to cause the mini queue to move in a particular set routine. For example, maybe 3 seconds forward, then 2 seconds right, so on and so forth. Therefore, the term in robotics, Dead Reckoning. So we have a motor block right here, mini queue motor block. And then we also have a chart here on the left. If I click into the chart, you'll see that there are a variety of what are called states. These are these like little bubbles hanging out here, and we have an entry point. Whenever you create a chart, state flow chart, you're going to want to indicate your first state and then an entry point into it, and that's the condition which our mini queue robot will start in. We have some output variables, R and L. Those represent for the speeds of each motor. You can hit this upwards arrow to jump back, so L is going into the left speed here, R is going into the right speed. Going back to the chart though, there's certain things that you can experiment with, one being the variables for speeds. Let's say that I want this to actually go at a speed of 150 and then the R to go at a speed of 55. That's perfectly possible and encouraged when you start working with these dead reckoning charts, because a lot of it, getting the type of movement you want, will require trial and error. You're also going to want to experiment with these number values right here. You try those out, you see how your program flows. So basically this is going to go forward for 4 seconds, after it's going to move into a left state for 1 second, and then it's going to go forward for another second, and really it follows the path all the way till it hits stop. What I'm going to show you now though is what to do if you wanted to create another state after stop. This is for if you become more advanced and you want to continue doing more things. The way you do that is you go to this sidebar here and you're going to select the state key, and let's say that I want this to do a spin now. This is after the stop motion. I want a state where my robot just spins endlessly. This is just a hypothetical thing, so I'm going to type in spin, giving the state a name. Then what you need to do is you need to connect the states to each other. So I'm going to take an arrow right here, and you want to go set the arrow to the state it's going to. So I'm going to click there, and then I'm going to drag this ball to where the state is coming from. So here I have a state stop leading into a state spin. Let's say that we want the spin state to cause R to go at minus 255 and then L to go at 0. So really it's going to be doing a pivoting thing. As soon as I click off the state, you'll see that Simulink adds in already like this entry bar, and the colors, 4 numbers appear, 255 being pink, 0 being pink as well. So here we have another state. It would obviously lead to this, but we also need to record what condition causes that state to flow. So let's say from stop to spin, it'll stop for after, let's say 5 seconds. I'm going to write in 5 sec. So you can see how we could continue adding on more and more states to create more and more complex types of movement. There will be times though where you'll want to have more inputs, for example, into your chart. If we want to start this dead reckoning model right now, what we'd have to continually do is press the reset button on the mini queue, and that's somewhat inconvenient. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new input state called button. So a button press will cause the mini queue to move forward. So what I'm going to do that is I'm first going to go to Tools. I'm going to go to Model Explorer, and I'm going to see here, if I click into chart, all the different types of states and variables within those states that exist right now. And what I want is I want a new input variable to exist, and I'm going to call this one button. So I'm going to select chart, then I'm going to go up here to the add data tab. I'm going to call this button, and I'm going to say that its scope is an input. After that I'll say apply, and then what I can do is I can close out this window, and when I go back out to my model right now, you'll see that all of a sudden on my chart I have an input button. I can then go into the mini queue toolbar, select in the button key, line up my blocks a little bit better, and then attach them as such. Now the button right now is not going to do anything. What I'll need to do is link it into my stateflow model, which you're seeing right here. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a new state right at the beginning, and I'm going to call this one beginning state or resting state. How about that? Resting state. In this state here, what I'm going to have is I'm going to have both motors be set to 0. Shouldn't be moving. I also want this state to be my entry point, so I'm just going to set an arrow like that. What I'm going to now do is I'm going to take the previous entry point and link it to the resting state. I want the transition between resting state to forward to happen when any button is pressed. So I'm going to select the arrow, and if you remember when we experimented with buttons, each button outputs its own value, meaning if I press button 1, what MATLAB records is the value 1, button 2 causes the numerical value 2. So I'm going to say any situation, representing it by these squared brackets. I'm going to say button, any situation where button is bigger than 0, cause the resting state to move into the forward state. And what this means is every time I press a button, it'll go through this whole routine here. The interesting thing now is that I can create a state or a flow between states, moving from the initial resting state all the way to what happens at the end where it's spinning. So let's say when it gets to the very end, what I want it to do is return back to the resting state. So when I press a button again, the whole routine executes again. That's why this is useful, and it's why I recommend you add in a button to your state flow model. Within our file of code, you can go into Simulink Dead Reckoning with Chart v2, and that Simulink model that I've made already includes a button. So try out some different types of movements. The key one you should attempt first is just getting the mini cue to move in a square pattern, but then you can go ahead and you can set up little tunnels for the mini cue to try and reach, or you could try more complicated shapes like a star.